Hello everyone, thank you for joining us this morning. Today we're looking at Office 365 portals, specifically how you could use them for vendor management. I'll give it about another minute or two, just allowing everyone to join, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Again, thank you very much, and look forward to spending the next half hour. All right, I think we could go ahead and get started. My clock here is showing a couple minutes past the hour. So again, thank you everyone very much for joining. This is scheduled to cover a half hour looking specifically at Office 365 portals, the vendor management component of that. If you have any questions as you're going through it, I'll do my best to look at the questions coming through and pause throughout the presentation and answer any of those as they come in. So feel free to submit any of those as I'm covering content that may perk your interest. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So as first of all is who is DynamicPoint? Just a quick introduction of who we are as an organization. And DynamicPoint, what we do is we create apps on top of Office 365. So we are very much a app development company that resides on an Office 365 framework. And to explain that to those, that haven't seen Office 365 apps, my best analogy that I've been able to come up with is it's very similar to installing an app on your phone. And when you install an app on your phone and ask you various questions about whether or not it could use the camera or your location or notifications and things of that nature, and we are very much doing that same thing, but on an Office 365 framework. We've been around a little bit longer than Office 365, so we were founded in 2009. Back then, Office 365 didn't exist, believe it or not. So we used to be a SharePoint development company, and then about 6 years or so ago, migrated all of our products to the Office 365 framework. So that's a quick introduction of who we are. As far as our product lineup, the one that we'll be focused on today is our portal app. And the premise of this portal app is it basically enables the sharing of data coming from an ERP or CRM system to an Office 365 SharePoint extranet. And that's what we're going to be spending the bulk of our time today looking at, is this concept of an Office 365 extranet and how you could specifically use that for vendor management. We also have two other products. We have a AP automation as well as an expense management. We will not be covering those today. We'll be focusing on the portal application. Okay, moving forward. So let's first of all start off with, what are the objectives of a portal? And really the objectives of a portal, from a benefits perspective, you're looking at obviously providing self-service access to information. And depending on who the audience is, that obviously that information can change. So if we're looking at a customer portal, it's such things as company information, contracts, order entry, inventory, financial details such as invoices, help desk, etc. So all of the things that you're interacting with your customers. On the vendor side, it's similar type of thing, but obviously the flip side of that, because we're more interested in vendor management, but it's company information, terms and conditions, purchase orders, W-9 contract information, RFPs, shipments, inventory, all the things that you are collaborating with your vendors on. And then last but not least, in an employee portal, such things obviously more internal HR focused, such as employee forms and handbooks, time entry, project management component, insight to company operations, etc. So the one that we're really looking at today is this vendor management aspect, right? So that's our focus of today, is taking a portal and what is the type of operations and functions and functionality I could use this portal to start providing to my vendors specifically. So One more aspect on the architecture of the product. Again, the product is just really an app that we're adding to an existing portal, and that portal, or the foundation for that portal, is being provided by SharePoint. So SharePoint is giving us this site that we are using to share content, and with our app gives us the ability to hook up to data, because obviously that's an important part of this content. So the portal itself could already contain such things as, documents and terms and conditions and information, etc. But then we want to hook it up to our ERP system and begin bringing in the data using the connectivity or the application program interfaces provided by this system, and we're going to share that data with our vendor, right? So such things as purchase orders, shipment details, things like that is the information that we are going to use this portal to connect to real time to that data and then begin collaborating with that information with our vendors. Okay, no further ado, let's start talking and showing the product as well as these portals, and we're going to go into the details on a few different areas. So I've broken the demo into part 1 and part 2. Part 1, we are just looking at the portal basically as a collaboration tool, and then part 2, we're going to get a little bit more sophisticated and look at some of the workflow and business automation we could use the portal for as well. So part 1, Office 365 as a portal. Branding, the licensing, report integration, other things that you could do just straight out of the box using Office 365 as your portal platform. And then we're going to show some examples of data integrations that our portal app is going to provide to this Office 365 portal. Such things as the ability to view, edit, and print purchase orders, receive notifications for any interaction in the portal, see financial details such as payment statuses, print invoices, statements, etc. So let's go ahead and switch out of PowerPoint, and we are going to go to our vendor portal. So first, a quick tour, right? The look and feel of it. As you can see, I have various calls to action on our vendor portal, and the styling of this, I'm using a dark background, a black, not black, blue, dark blue background here. Obviously some logos and branding that I've added. I have some various calls to action, such as the ability to look at purchase orders, view historical invoices, look at my contracts associated to me, manage my company information, look at my profile, submit any questions, and we'll go through a handful of these to show you some of that functionality. I also have an integrated Power BI report showing supplier quality. So this report is being filtered for the authenticated user, and the data that it's showing specific to quality or other type of information is really being filtered for this authenticated user. So as you can see, you could provide them a dashboard that's very specific to that vendor that is logged into that portal. Other things I've just added here for fun, an event catalog, just talking about what's coming up on the calendar, as well as some document libraries. So if I want to share some specifications or a statement of work with this vendor, I can most certainly put all that data on the portal as well. Okay, so now when we start going into the look and feel of this, you have, if nothing in this world, a lot of options as far as how this portal looks and feels. And the best thing that I could steer you to for inspiration there is Microsoft provides what they call their SharePoint lookbook. And if you click on the examples here, you could see, there's all of these different formats and templates that you could download to begin creating your portal. So I could click on any of these, say I like one of them as far as the design, and I could go ahead and add that directly to my Office 365 tenant. So now I have this sample portal that I could obviously change and swap out the pictures or whatever, but it provides a framework for how this portal is going to get started and the branding associated to it. So it's a nice thing to sort of kickstart the look and feel of your portal, as well as a lot of different examples provided by the Microsoft designers. So a lot of options there. Okay, so we'll get out of the lookbook and we'll go back to our portal. And we're going to talk about, some of the integrations that we have here. So for sake of example, let's click on the big one, looking at purchase orders. So when I click on this, what it's doing is looking at the purchase orders specific to this authenticated vendor, right? So I've obviously logged into this portal, and I'm now seeing the POs that are specific to my user. I could view these, I could drill into them, I could see the line items associated to them. And the other thing that I've enabled here based on some configuration is I've allowed the vendor to update a delivery date as well as acknowledge the PO. So maybe I want to acknowledge this and then say, hey, I'm going to be a little late on the delivery and I'm going to go ahead and update this. So any of these changes that you're seeing are actually flowing directly back and forth with your underlying ERP data. We are not storing any of this information, nor are we replicating it. Your ERP system is still the home of all this data. What the portal is providing is a window into that information. The other thing you can see here is a print. If I click that print icon, we're actually going to call the underlying PO report that exists in the PO system, in the ERP system, and generate that directly as a PDF. So now I can save it or download it or print it or whatever I want to do. The other option you see here is submission, and what that's going to do is give me the ability to submit any documentation through the portal specific to this PO. So if this was like a quote, of course I could include RFP documentation, or if I'm providing any specifications or any shipping details, I could go ahead and add those directly to the portal and select those and upload them as well. So as I'm interacting with this information, we could also tie to this to notifications in the system. So if I open up my email here, you can see I received the notification of the update that I just made. So my delivery date, of course, has changed, and now it's being highlighted, as well as you can see my acknowledgement has changed from not being acknowledged to being acknowledged. So any of the interaction in the portal I could also tie to notifications and workflows and approvals, such that, of course, vendors aren't just changing things without me knowing it, right? They could obviously escalate them or generate notifications based on any of those updates. Okay, other things you could do, such as look at invoices. So maybe I want to see the payment status on my invoices and which ones are open or which ones are historical. I also have a different option of how I've configured this with the print icon here. So if I want them to, oops, looks like I've already printed that one, but if I want them to go ahead and print them, they could do those as well directly from the portal. Other things, search purchase orders. So this is just a different type of control that I've added as opposed to listing all the purchase orders. I've given them a search capability. Same idea, but now as opposed to exposing any of these, if I have a lot of them, I could search on them based on status or document type, etc. And then it's going to query all those POs for those vendors and display them based on whatever criteria I put in. Other things, manage company information. If I want to see my company specifics and allow them to update their information or add users, such as a profile, or submit questions. So all of these are, again, operating in the same fashion in that they're pulling back data from my vendor record. So maybe I, am moving or want to change my city or something like that. I could go ahead and update that. Again, having that flow through. Other times, that was just a specific address or a simple address change, but such things as banking information, as ACH details or bank accounts, if I'm paying my vendors using ACH, they could go ahead and update that as well. We've most certainly seen that quite a few times before. Managing my profile, if I want to come in here and, edit my email address for my given users, or again, change a phone number, I could do that. Okay, other things, submitting a question. So in this case, I've tied in some additional Office 365 functionality, and I've supplied a simple form, right? So what's the priority of my question? Please enter the details. How can I get help? And first and last name, as well as an email. So as you can see, I could tie in other Microsoft technologies, such as a simple form, and then continue to build upon this foundation that's being given to us by Office 365. So this is actually going to kick off a workflow, and I'm going to get notifications and assign it to someone based on that question. So there is more going on behind that simple form, but we're going to go ahead and skip that for today and keep going. All right, so that's the basis of that, this portal that I'm showing you, the ability to look at data, update information, and, receive notifications and print reports and things like that. So all these things that I've been showing is sort of the basis or the very elementary elements aspects of this portal. And if I were to bring up this presentation again, that's really where portals start, if you will, for us, is this data sharing and reporting element. So really this idea of having this 24/7 self-service access is usually the motivation for the portal, right? Is that way I don't have to send my vendors information. I don't have to, have them call me and ask for details. They could go get it themselves. And as your usage of the portal gets more sophisticated, you could start introducing such things as workflow and entire business automation now that you have the foundations implemented. And for that, I have a couple examples. I have a contract renewal process where I'm going to allow my vendors to renew their contracts directly from the portal with some workflow associated to it, as well as a vendor onboarding. And specifically on the vendor onboarding, I've automated the W-9 collection as well as some other vendor details, and I'm going to go ahead and create that vendor automatically after they've been onboarded. So 2 examples. We'll go through the contract renewal first. It's a little bit more simple, and then we'll hit the vendor onboarding process next. So first of all, the contract renewal. This starts basically with my contracts expiring. I have a contract with the vendor and I need to renew it because, of course, the date is up. And I'm going to have that vendor request that renewal or, signify that they want to renew that contract. And then I'm going to kick off a workflow that's going to put that through the renewal process, whatever that is, right? In my case, I'm going to send them an updated contract, and then it's going to go for an internal review prior to updating the details of that contract in my underlying accounting system. So let's go ahead and look at that. So as you can see here, I have a simple icon called contract status. And if I click on this, it's going to pull back all of my contracts that I have with the vendor, and I can highlight expiration dates. So obviously here I'm looking at these more proactively, but of course I could have sent them an email or something like that specifying that one is about to expire. So let's just pick on one of these down here and say that I want to renew it. So I have a start date, I have an expiration date, and I'm going to go ahead and choose to renew it. And by clicking on that icon, you can see here I just got a simple text saying you'll receive an email with further information. And the reason being is I want to now kick off a workflow and have them complete additional documentation specific to this contract. So it's not as simple in my case of just saying, hey, you want to renew. I need to get more information from them. So if I were to open up my email, you can see I've received a notification. And if you look at this closely, you can see it's actually been generated from DocuSign. So what I've done is with that workflow, I have called a DocuSign contract and sent it to that vendor. And specifically in this case, I'm just using our end user licensing agreement as an example. But if I click on this review, the vendor now has a DocuSign version of my end user license agreement for them to review and ultimately sign, of course. So I'll go ahead and put my electronic signature here and then specify that I've finished my review and signature of the contract. And after the vendor completes that, I then want to kick off an internal review. So it has to go to someone saying, hey, this vendor wants to renew their contract. Is that okay? Is there any other aspects that I need to check before completing this renewal? So what I should see here is my contract renewal approval message. So this is no longer going to the vendor, but rather someone internal to the company, like a manager or a buyer, someone in AP, that now has to review that contract that was just completed. So they could obviously approve or reject it, but then they could also link directly to that contract so they could review everything and make sure all the details that was completed by the vendor looks good. And this notification, by the way, or this approval action is being generated by, you can see here, Microsoft Flow, otherwise known as Power Automate. And another really nice thing about these approval actions is, of course, I could approve or reject it directly from email, but if you're more of a Teams-oriented organization, Teams has an app simply called Approvals that I could use to review those. So if I look at my Approvals app, I will see that same notification directly in Teams as well, if that's your preference. So I have my contract renewal, I could see it's been requested, and I could do that same action here. I could link to that completed form, and I could approve or reject it, as well as reassign it and do other things. So I'm going to go ahead and approve it, either from here or from the email. It doesn't matter, whatever my preference. See, I received a notification that's been approved. If I went back and I looked at that same email, you'll see that it's going to tell me it's already been completed. So it doesn't really matter where I complete it from. They all sync together, right? So it doesn't matter if I did it from the email or from Teams. It's all the same action, if you will. And then you can see here I received a simple notification that my contract has been renewed. And I intentionally left this screen open here. So the contract that I renewed is this hardware one. And if I were to keep this screen open, nothing is updated. But if I were to refresh this, upon approval of that renewal, we've integrated the new expiration directly into the accounting system. And in this case, I've set it for a year. So you can see here the date has now been updated to today, but a year from today, because that's my new expiration date. So in other words, I'm pretending, or for the sake of this example, I have an annual expiration or renewal that needs to be done. So as you can see, it's now 2022, a year from today. So that's one simple example. The next one that we wanted to discuss was vendor onboarding, right? In other words, I have a new vendor that is not in my system that I want to bring into my system and start collecting contracts and specifically the W-9 from. And then I want to have some similar workflow and approval after they have completed their aspect of the onboarding process. So let's go ahead and go to my portal. Oops, looks like I may have closed it. So let's go ahead and get me back there. And go to my portal. And we don't want the employee portal, we want the customer portal. Sorry about that, it looks like I closed it at some point. Oops, I say customer, we're doing vendor. Can't keep it straight. Okay. So what this is going to take us to is back to a vendor portal, and I have a onboarding request here. So this would be submitted, by someone within my company that wanted to work with a new vendor. And again, this form or this is using Microsoft Forms, so I could add as many fields here as I want. Mine is pretty simple. I just have the vendor name that I want to do business with, and then their email. And what this is going to do is initialize a onboarding process with this vendor, and it's going to use this email that of course I'm entering there to send the vendor the onboarding requirements. So if I give my email a quick second here and I go ahead and go to it, I will have hopefully it looks like we got it. Okay, so here is my contract, again using DocuSign, but I have a new contract to review as a proposed vendor with this new company. And if I click on it, I now have a vendor onboarding form. Again, it's just a form that I've created using DocuSign. And I could fill out various information, specify what type of organization I am, put in my EIN number, and then more importantly, I've put the W-9 here for them to complete. So they could, of course, complete all this electronically, and then last but not least, sign it. I won't bore us with me completing this, and I'll go ahead and finish this. Again, it's going to go for an internal approval, right? So the vendor sort of did their part of it. And now I want a manager to review that to make sure that everything looks good prior to setting up this vendor for payment, of course, in my accounting system. So I have a new vendor request that's come through, again, using the Power Automate approval. So I could look at it in Teams or on my mobile phone. But I could click to this, drill into the completed W-9 as well as the onboarding vendor request that I have just completed, and then choose to approve or reject it. When I approve this, as you probably figured, it's going to keep moving on in the workflow, and then it's going to do a couple things. One is going to create the vendor for me automatically. And then the second thing is going to send the vendor an invitation, basically saying, welcome to the portal, right? So they are now onboarded. We're going to give them access to the portal in the background, and they're going to get a simple, in this case, simple notification. I didn't spend a ton of time branding it before this call. Obviously, I could have my logos and make it much more, fancy than this, but it's just a simple notification saying you're now a vendor in our system. To access the portal, click this link. And of course, that is going to give them permission and invite them right back to the portal. So as you can see, that was similar to the last one, but as opposed to applying that to contracts, I applied that same idea to the onboarding process. So going back, I know we're almost at time here, so we'll start wrapping it up. That was in a demonstration. Customer success stories. Again, we have several customers using the product. We have people using it for order entry, for vendor management, obviously being the focus for today, for like a payment portal so customers could see their invoices and generate statements, as well as, service call management, etc. So we have all kinds of examples of how the portal is being leveraged, and it really depends on your business. But across the board, generally speaking, people are doing it for that self-service reason, for savings, for, giving increased efficiency, and then hopefully just in general improving the relations and streamlining the processes with whoever your partner is, whether it be a customer or a vendor, an employee, etc. The whole reason for doing this is to give them this information at their fingertips when they want, such that they don't have to call me or send me an email, etc. Again, I can't really quote unquote take credit for inventing this concept. It's very much being pushed by Microsoft, and their licensing supports this. All of these, external users, as they're called, are free. So I could share this with as many customers and vendors as I want, and they don't charge me any extra, which is nice. But they do have some documentation that you could read on this, of which I'll send to everyone on this call, so you could, read their information on this concept of creating a B2B portal with customers and vendors. That is all I had for today. I thank you everyone for giving me a half an hour of your time. I will follow up with my contact information if you have any questions. And everyone have a great day. And again, I appreciate everyone joining. Thank you so much.